Ladies and gentlemen, we have ourselves a clock. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can arbitrarily set that time now and do so in less than a second, which means that's how we make our clock. Here's the magic recipe. What you're looking at is a strange beast. This is not iRig. This is a different type of time encoding format called XR3. I believe it's sort of like a different one called 2137. It's just literally just a number it refers to it as. But what you're seeing here is a little bit of a hack on top of a hack on top of a hack. Let me explain. I filed a Freedom of Information Act request. And I asked them for any information they had about this little device. And bless their hearts, they were actually pretty cool about it. They gave me a call and said, well, first of all, what are you doing? I answered very nicely, I'm just looking to build a clock maybe to figure out a little bit about time encoding along the way, but they were okay with that. And wouldn't you know it, but they sent back a stack of probably, maybe 40, 50 pages of documentation spanning about 1971 through 1978. And I've got it all, including schematic diagrams of how every last bit of that thing is built. Let me prop this up here. Put the camera down for a second here. I mean, this sort of stuff. And from that, and with this, which is actually a little bit of a blow-up of one of the graphs they sent, this is the timing diagram for how to send binary coded decimal in a format, two different formats. One's called like I said, XR3, and the other one's called 2137. Wow, where do I begin? It's been fun because I've realized that the way they used to think about these things back in the 70s is very different than the way we think about them now, whereas we would almost always intrinsically associate 1 with high and 0 with low. And then would maybe vary the voltage accordingly, maybe just by the length of time it was in either state. They went about it a little bit differently. They encoded 1 in binary as a long pulse and 0 as a short pulse, and a low or a nothing as just as padding. Looking from left to right, I mean, this right here, this little chunk is sort of the representation of what you start with over here, this thing. So you have essentially a 10 count, or 10 cycles, at least under XR3. That's that type of code. And within that 10, the way you tell it, okay, you're about to get this frame of data, is to send 10 peaks of modulated carrier of 250 hertz. All right, I'll get to this in a second. I'll tell you why that matters and why we're at 80 kilohertz in a moment. But as you can see, it's just a binary coded decimal for hours, minutes, and seconds, and using short bursts of modulated carrier, we're able to pass it a time. Now, this other format here, 2137, looks to be practically identical to XR3, except instead of having, for low frequency, it's for high frequency data transmission. This device is meant to sit in between a reel-to-reel audio player and any number of these displays. they're daisy chainable in the end. Pardon me, my voice is giving out. Anyway, the reason why this filter goes up so high is because people would mount those tapes at the NSA and then fast forward them. And when you fast forward them, obviously, you're essentially changing the pitch in a way. Now, here's the problem, and this is the last hurdle I had to work through. This thing's expecting a sine wave. This thing doesn't know what the fuck a sine wave is. The closest it can do is pulse width modulation. All right, so I had to go buy one of these, which is a I want to say an MCP 4725. It's a digital to analog converter, a 12-bit DAC, and then write the code to essentially fake a sine wave by varying the voltage along a pre-calculated sine curve, and then try to pump that to the clock as fast as possible. The problem is, to do a pretty nicely granular sine wave artificially takes too much time. I can't pump 20 bits worth of data using a nice sine wave fast enough for the clock to hear it. So the trick is stick with that 250 hertz carrier wave, but tell it to interpret it very, very fast. At 80 kilohertz, that sine wave is going to look a hell of a lot like a square wave, which is exactly what I'm bumping at it right now. I'm essentially kind of tricking it in that this is a 250 hertz encoding format. It's XR3 by the book. But I'm ramming that thing through there so fast, it would probably be an unbelievably fast tape. I mean, that if you were fast-forwarding an actual analog tape, that thing would be probably catching on fire from friction. But there it is. I can arbitrarily set that number, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I can do it pretty quick, too. Let's see. Here's the bit pattern for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's set all of that to 0. And again, being able to write a clock that updates with the correct time is just a matter of writing code that gets the time of day and converts it into a string of binary like you see here. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to click Submit here and push it to the Arduino. And it takes a couple seconds to compile, but just to show you, there we go. Okay, do you see how long it took between when the oscilloscope had flatlined and when the time had actually occurred? I mean, just instantaneously. It's really nice. What's actually interesting is I thought this was a bug at first. You'll notice even though we pushed all zeros, we ended up with a 1. But if you look really carefully at that lamp, it's trying for just a brief instant, probably 1/80,000th of a pulse to 0. What happens in XR3 is that if you send if you send the same time signature twice, it's actually smart enough to say, oh, well, that's kind of screwed up. I'm just going to increment, because that would be the next logical thing to happen on the tape. Is that if, okay, I must have misread that, so I'm going to just increment it and wait for the next pulse. So it'll always be +1 if you repeat it over and over and over and over and over again. But if we, set it to, here's another example. I'll comment out this one, which was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry, I'm going to keep the camera on it. And push this one, which we've called an array XR3A. Let's change our code here. and push that, and we should get 172537. Okay, uploading it. Oscilloscope's off. Bang, 172537. Immediately after the signal's received. So all I have to do is send one frame, and I've got the whole rest of the second left to do whatever the hell I want with. I'm not in a rush anymore. So we've done it. We got ourselves a Nixie clock off of eBay that ended up being a Department of Defense NSA manufactured piece of hardware. We've successfully back-engineered the time encoding protocol so that we can make this the biggest, most badass effing Nixie clock ever made. Rack mountable even. And we've done it using nothing but the natural tones it was designed to hear. You will see in here that there is absolutely no patching that was done. I could have done this real easy and just, you know, solder on connections onto you know, the Nixie drivers to make it, you know, force the numbers to be whatever I wanted them to be. But nope, we're doing it the real way. As you can see, there's our BNC, comes out around here and hooks up right yonder. Had something funny happen. It was really frustrating the other day because I'd figured out how to get, you know, the time, but it was really slow. It took, you know, like 4 or 5 seconds to push 20 bits. That's, by the way, it takes 20 bits to set this. And as you can see, it's moving 20 bits in probably, you know, sub 1/100th of a second or so now. But when I was trying to do it with the sine wave function, and it was too slow, it was like, oh shit, you know, how the hell am I going to increase the speed of this thing? And realistically, I couldn't, because, you know, the Arduino can't tell the DAC here that you know, to go any faster. It's talking over I2C, and there is no kind of burst mode for I2C on Arduino, no matter what the model, it turns out. By the way, I got this at Adafruit. Wonderful little shop. Highly recommend it. Came out packaged perfectly with beautiful instructions written in plain English, and hell, 2-3 days after I bought it. I live on the absolute opposite end of the continent from them, so it works out real well. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned, but I got that oscilloscope at geez, I can't remember the name of the place. There's a place on the south end of town that recycles computers for people. You bring in your old hardware, and they'll rehab it and make, you know, like a Windows 7 PC out of it, or something for someone who wants a, you know, someone in the community who wants a cheap PC to learn with. Real cool place. Some guy, well, I showed up one afternoon and I saw this oscilloscope sitting outside on the rack ready to be inventoried and, you know, potentially being, you know, rained on. So I go inside and I said, hey, I noticed you got a real nice old analog oscilloscope out there. Are you interested in selling it? You probably, you know, maybe have had someone ask you about it before, but, you know, before you inventory it, do you mind if I buy it from you? And it just happened that the guy who brought it in was right there. He was standing right there. So I worked out a deal with him on the spot with that place's blessings, and bought it from him for $5. And it's awesome. I mean, I love the thing. It took me a little while to clean it up and learn from it, but it is an absolute gem to work with. Love every last little bit of it. Let me drop it down a little bit. Well, anyway, you get the idea. It's actually a storage oscilloscope, but these buttons are kind of jammed, so if I push them in, it'll require me taking the thing apart to unjam them. But you get the idea. But there you have it, man. We got it. We've got ourselves a working proof of concept model, and all it takes from here is just writing the code that updates that bit pattern that you saw over yonder, and in accordance with the spec for XR3, and we're done. I'm looking forward to enjoying it, maybe even putting it up on eBay. It'll be a very, very interesting auction, considering I'll bundle the Freedom of Information request I'm sorry, Freedom of Information Act request with that. So there'll be a nice little story, a little provenance behind the item. That's a proud moment to be me. I can actually legitimately claim I've back engineered some NSA hardware. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.